Welcome to the Light and Shadows Global Channel, where we unravel the most intriguing mysteries that defy logic. The case we're going to investigate today is an enigma that for years seemed like something out of a movie script. The story of a man found in a hotel room with the most bizarre and unbelievable solution of all. Prepare to learn about the case that the police couldn't solve, but which an almost invisible clue finally unraveled. In 2010, in Houston, Texas, a maid at the extended stay hotel, in the midst of her routine, came across something that would haunt her forever. After knocking on the door of room 348, she got no response. With permission from management, she opened the door, and the scene was eerily strange. Lying face down on the bed was a man. He seemed to be sleeping, but when she tried to wake him, the maid realized he wasn't reacting. He wasn't breathing, he wasn't moving, he was dead. The police were called, and the investigation into what seemed to be a routine case began. But as investigators examined the room, each new detail only deepened the mystery. The man, who would later be identified as 46-year-old Greg Flanagan, was a petroleum engineer traveling for work. However, it was not his identity that most shocked the experts. It was the contents of the room. The room seemed untouched. There was no luggage, at least not what you would expect from a traveler. Inside the closet, there was no suitcase or backpack. Instead, there was a pile of clothes, all folded, and with their purchase tags still intact. In his pants pocket, police found a considerable amount of money in various currencies, as if he were preparing for an international trip. The most shocking thing, however, was Greg's body itself. There were no signs of violence, no injuries, no signs of a struggle. It was as if he had simply lain down and mysteriously stopped living. The autopsy was performed, and to the perplexity of the medical examiners, the result was inconclusive. The report indicated that Greg had suffered a massive internal hemorrhage. His liver, lungs, and heart showed extensive damage, but there was no external cause for these injuries. Without an answer, the doctors were forced to conclude that he had died of a heart attack. The case of the man in room 348 seemed destined to become another unsolved mystery, one of those stories that time turns into an urban legend. The case was filed away by the police, and Greg's death was ruled natural. But for his mother, Joanne Flanagan, the story made no sense. How could a healthy 46-year-old man die so violently internally for no apparent reason? And what about the new clothes and the lack of luggage? Her motherly intuition told her that something was deeply wrong. Determined to find the truth, Joanne did not hesitate. She gathered all the money she could and hired one of the most respected private detectives in Houston, Ken Brennan. She gave him the only possible mandate: find out what happened to my son. Brennan, a security forces veteran with decades of experience, took the case and began working with his core philosophy: if you want to find the answer, go back to the scene and see everything with your own eyes. He visited room 348 and spent hours studying every inch of the place, retracing Greg's steps. He looked at every object, every corner. The police had already done this. The hotel management had too. But Ken Brennan was looking for something they didn't know existed. He didn't care about the clothes, the money, or the luggage. His mind was fixed on the only thing that mattered: Greg Flanagan's body. The autopsy had spoken of immense internal damage, but with no visible point of entry. This could only mean one thing: the cause was so small it had been overlooked. While searching the room, he moved one of the tables away from the wall, a wall that separated room 348 from room 349. There, a few feet from the bed where Greg was found, was an almost imperceptible stain, a stain that most people, and even the police, would ignore. It looked like a small piece of plaster, about 1 centimeter in diameter, poorly covered with what appeared to be toothpaste. Brennan immediately asked to see the room next door. He already had a theory, but he needed confirmation, and he found it. Room 349 was occupied by 3 men, electricians from a contracting company, who were in town for work. They had a habit of drinking after work, and on the night of Greg's death, they were in their room. That night, one of the electricians, Lance Mueller, was showing off a small caliber weapon, a Derringer. In a moment of carelessness and under the influence of alcohol, the gun went off. The small bullet passed through the wall and, without anyone noticing, disappeared. The three men were startled, but since there was no fire alarm, and as the sound didn't seem to have attracted anyone's attention, they decided to simply cover the bullet hole in the wall with a little toothpaste and not tell anyone. The trajectory of the projectile was clear. The bullet had entered Greg's body through a subtle and unexpected point. The entry was so small and in a location that would not cause visible external bleeding that it went completely unnoticed in the initial autopsy. Once inside, the bullet, instead of exiting, carved a destructive path, piercing several internal organs and causing the massive hemorrhage. It was precisely the absence of an obvious entry wound and without bleeding that made the case seem like an unsolvable medical mystery. The police reopened the case and, with Brennan's evidence, interrogated the three men. Mueller confessed to what happened. He was convicted of manslaughter, a tragedy caused by a combination of carelessness, alcohol, and a shot that the experts couldn't see. Detective Ken Brennan proved that the mystery only seemed unsolvable because the solution was too simple. So simple that the police didn't find it. The story of a man found dead with no signs of violence, with empty luggage, and a life surrounded in secrets was, in the end, the story of a stray bullet and a hole in the wall that was covered with toothpaste. What did you think of this mystery? Do you have any other interesting cases that made you even more curious? Share with us in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and click the bell to get notifications. And so, once again, we prove that the deepest mysteries are not always hidden in the dark. Sometimes they are right in front of us, just waiting for someone to shed light on them.